perspectives. This show is going to focus on one issue, and we've invited two guests to discuss that issue from different perspectives. Tonight we're going to look at death and dying from different religious perspectives. Our guests are Sue Grillo, who is from the Soka Gakkai International, which is a Buddhist world peace organization, and Ray Davis, who is a witch priest from the Raven Moon Coven. So thank you very much for coming. One thing I would like to say is that these are individual ideas and perspectives. They do not pretend to speak for all people of their religious beliefs. So thank you for joining us. And I'd like to start out with, what do you think happens when people die? Who'd like to start? Sue?
Okay. Well, my name is Sue Grillo. As Sharon said, I am a member of the Buddhist organization called the Soka Gakkai International. And it is a religion based on Mahayana Buddhism rather than Hinayana Buddhism. Hinayana is more like the Zen way, where you want to extinguish your earthly desires, whereas Mahayana, which is what I practice, it's to use our obstacles, our desires, and our problems in life to become enlightened. And when Sharon asked me to do this piece, she asked me to bring in some visual reference. And immediately I realized I'll bring in the triad, which I put on my altar. And as I read about the triad, I realized that the triad in itself gave a Buddhist perspective of death and life. So I thought it was appropriate. And if I might start, one of the reasons why people study and practice religion, one of the major reasons is to answer the eternal questions of life and death. So what I'd like to do is start by talking about the triad, and in itself will give us some summation of the Buddhist perspective of death and life. The triad represents the three truths, and the evergreen symbolizes the truth of temporary existence. Temporary existence is our physical bodies, and what happens is that in our physical bodies we could allow Buddhahood to manifest. If we have a problem with the material world, we take that problem and we take it to, we pray about it, and in that we become enlightened, because what we do is we change our karma by prayer. And through our earthly desires, we are enlightened because we're changing our karma. Karma is the Sanskrit word for action, good or bad. So in this physical body, we have a chance to purify our life and our karma and become enlightened. Another reason why people practice religion is to end the sufferings of birth, old age, sickness, and death. And that again is attached to our physical bodies. So the more enlightened we become, that's as much karma as we change in this lifetime. The candle represents the truth of non-substantiality. This one is a little bit harder to grasp for some. And that's our essence, the essence that takes on our physical body, and which are one. Our spirit and our bodies are one. And death is the temporary discontinuance of the functions that make up and maintain an individual life, but not the extinction of life itself. Life in a state that we call death fuses into the environment and the universe. When a life is united with the universe, it's but one cycle in a chain of continual existence extending from the infinite past to the eternal future.
So I think you're right. That's hard to grasp for me.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so you're saying that the candle symbolizes life, and then...
No, it's non-substantiality, which is the spirit.
Okay.
It's like electricity. There's so many electrical forces from all over the world, underground, fossil fuel. But in order for electricity to have any kind of, to be of any help, it has to take on a physical form.
I see.
Put an iron in, you can iron. You unplug the iron is kind of dead for a moment. But the electricity still is encompassed.
And I know that our viewers can't smell what we're smelling, but we have some incense burning here as well. And that's the third part of the triad?
Yeah, the incense symbolizes actually the truth of the middle way. And it's where these two, the non-substantiality, the energy, the spirit, and our bodies, it's the vehicle in which we become enlightened. The middle way is the path of the Buddha. It's a potential to manifest Buddha nature in this lifetime. And basically, when we pray to end our sufferings, we become courageous, we become compassionate, and then we can, in turn, pass that on to the people that are around us, and we are more open to help relieve other people of their sufferings. That's the true to Bodhisattva and on to Buddhist enlightenment. I would like to make a quote from Norman Cousins, which Norman Cousins says, "No one need fear death. We need fear only that we may die without having known our greatest potential, our greatest power, the power of one's free will to give one's life for others. If something comes to life in others because of us, then we have made an approach toward immortality." And I thought he kind of summed up the middle way pretty well.
So when someone dies, from a Buddhist perspective, when someone dies, they're still in some form. Is that like reincarnation, or?
Yeah, what happens is death is an experience. When we grow old, it's uncomfortable to live. So it basically brings us to our physical body deteriorates and our energy stays. Now we have the sums and balances of karma when we die, and when we're in a state of death, and ku as the Buddhists call it, our karma is kind of like rang up, and then we go on, it's like a sums and balance thing.
Cosmic checkout.
And there you go, karmatic checkout, cosmic checkout. And while we're in that state of death, our life is going to take on a new form. And as much karma as purification we've done in this lifetime, that's the higher form we can get into, or the lower one, depending on how your life is.
That gives me a lot to think about for tonight. So Ray, from the pagan perspective or the Wiccan perspective?
Well, yeah, actually, we also are a belief in reincarnation, and also a belief that life without terminals. The primary symbol would be the circle. It's been represented in many, many ways as a circle, as a snake biting its own tail. And the idea is that since birth and death would not be terminals, it would be the same thing, points along a circle, meaning one leads to the other. There is sex, there's birth, there's life, there's death, and it continues along that way. So it would be...
So it's cyclical, it's not linear.
It would be an occurrence in your existence. In fact, there are beliefs that they happen concurrently. We perceive them in a linear fashion. With meditation, we can see them as occurring simultaneously. And like you were saying also, this particular, the details of this particular life go along. And this life is geared to particular references. You are a particular way for particular reasons in this life. And when you have solved those things, it's time for a new set of circumstances to learn new things. And that's why death becomes a part of it. It's also, I think, a different way of looking at death and birth because than Western is used to, because you realize that all of them are good in themselves, all of them serve a function, and all of them are part of the others. Without death, there wouldn't be birth, there wouldn't be... and this comes out of, we're a nature religion, it comes out of observance of nature. That's basically what happens. If you have a garden, what is sunflowers this year is compost during the winter and is pansies next year. And without the compost, there is no next year, there is no growth. Everything stagnates without birth, death, life, and of course, sexuality.
Goes round and round.
The duality of sex sort of fires the whole thing. That's the fuel that gets the engine going, yeah.
So it's interesting, from both these perspectives, it sounds as if death is not an end in any way, which, as I grew up Christian, death was the end. Is there a concept of heaven or hell or purgatory in either?
Well, that would be hard to say. That is supposing on your particular ideas of what that is. Are there things that are
I think
hi-
I'm
are
coming
there
from a
higher
different
planes?
Christian,
Yeah, are
you
there
know.
higher planes? Yeah, there are. And when I said things exist simultaneously, that means the place you would be moving along to is part of you now. That's part of what connects this life to the divine. I think Buddhism also, the idea is that there is not a separate life after death. There is not a separate life that's religious. That both things that happen on the physical plane and the spiritual plane are happening at the same time. You don't need to separate them into, this is what I do on Sunday when I do this. When I do this, God hears me. When I do this, He doesn't. You know, it's not that kind of thing.
Right.
So it's not like, you know, the body dies and the soul goes off to heaven.
Well, in Buddhism,
Or
there's,
hell, depending
yeah,
on-
there's actually there's not a concept of the soul, which sounds like spirit. I mean, you know, that would be the same thing. But the soul is supposed to go to heaven or hell, whereas the Buddhists believe heaven and hell are in this body that we hold. You know, hell is a state of suffering, and heaven is a state of elation. Heaven, actually, in the Buddhist realm of the worlds of Buddhism, is not even the highest world because it's a state of desire. Actually, the fulfillment of desire, I should say, which is great and very heavenly, but it's within our bodies. And again, the more we make this life as pure and as karmatically just as we can, then we get to a higher place in our next life, and that can be even more heavenly than we can make it in this life, depending on, you know, what we bring to it.
That would kind of, and again, when I say I speak for witches, I don't speak for every denomination. There are as many denominations of witch as there are Christian. But one of the things that is believed is the particular details of each life are less important than the sum of that. So there are many cases where people cling to details and bring them forth, but what the universe preserves in each of these lives is not the fact that that you have brown hair or that you have fair skin or are blonde. What it, or you know, or like artichokes, small details about who you are, but the larger essence, the important part of that, is immortal and does go on, which is actually probably one of the big lessons in living, is you have to try to sort out the small things from what's really important.
So don't sweat the small stuff, kind of thing.
Well, I get a chuckle out of this because, you know, I haven't been around for the time that Buddhism has been around 2,000 years ago, but one of the things that I've read about is that we choose our karma. If you want to know what's going to happen in the future.
And by karma you mean?
Karma meaning action. We choose what, but we choose what kind of situation, because, you know, karma creates a situation too. So we choose those situations by our karma. I read, you know, that we choose our karma. And like you said about the hair or this or that, you know, you might, you know, make a wish, you know, how the universe responds, that you were blonde in the next lifetime, because being blonde in this lifetime was oh so, you know, desirable. But at the same time, in the next lifetime, if your wish came true, it might not be popular. You know, it's like kind of, you know, when you choose that karma, when you ask the universe that question, you know, you don't know. It does fall into mundane things that don't mean a lot.
The tenets of magic, because a lot of magic does, a lot of the magic that people think about does have to do with everyday things, with money, with other things. What basically magic is about is that same kind of thing. How much is it that you want to push against the flow of things, and how much you want to go with it? While many people, because of desire, tend to try to go against the flow of things, go upstream, there is a price to pay always for that. And of course, if you can get what you want going in the direction of the way things are flowing, obviously there's benefits both ways. You get what you want, and you progress, you evolve that much further because you've found the way that things are flowing.
It's interesting because I'm getting the feeling where at the beginning of this, where, oh, we have two totally different perspectives, you know, Buddhism and Wiccan, there seems to be a lot more in common than, you know, I would have thought at the beginning.
Very, very ancient religions. While the world olden times was not connected as swiftly as we are today. One of the things that one of the ways I found witchcraft was I did study a lot of older religions and a lot of new religions, and I looked and I said, I know these things keep occurring over and over again, and I know they're things I believe.
And again, it sounds like the cycles.
So yes, well, eventually I ended up finding, I found a religion that had all of that, and the larger truths do tend to grow from older truths, and so you are going to find a lot of the universal things that people know inside.
That's really interesting. So back to our issue of death and dying. What are the rituals? I know growing up there was, the last rites when somebody's very sick. There's, the wake and the funeral. As far as, I grew up Catholic. What kind of rituals or practices do you have around death and dying?
Well, on one's deathbed, if people that are practicing Buddhists would come to another practicing Buddhist deathbed and chant, do pray with them, and to keep them connected to the idea of eternal life, and not to fear death. And chanting actually helps to relax, and so when people are approaching death, they're not as afraid. They know they're not alone, and they're aware of the concept that they're not going to be gone forever. But in terms of ritual, we do have memorials, and we burn incense. And there's one ritual that we do is we do 3 pinches of incense for the 3 ways of determining karma, which is or creating karma, which is thoughts, words, and deeds. It's as simple as that. But the 3 pinches we put for the deceased are to basically to just bring them into a more enlightened state.
So is this like a funeral?
Yeah, it's a memorial. Yeah, it doesn't. We don't. It's not a casket laid out, and because Buddhism is new in this country, a lot of us. I'm an Italian Catholic, growing up. So and although I'd like to be cremated and my organs going to people living, the Catholics still have the coffins laid out and what have you. And if my family felt that that's what they wanted to do, I wouldn't, that's just a formality. I wouldn't get wrapped up in that. So I'm kind of like, in terms of that formality of being laid out in a casket and, the whole deal, like, I would leave that up to the living, but by all means give my organs to the living, and burn me up.
Now, does the karma, I know that there's been, just a little off the subject, with organ transplants, and they feel like the soul of that person is there. Is there any kind of?
The body is, the spirit is actually no longer there. The spirit's already gone on, and kept going. The body is just basically
practical.
Well, I think what she's concerned about is there's a theory recently about memory of the flesh, and that again would not be spirit also, but that if it occurs, it occurs as memory, which again would be the details that we're talking about as opposed to.
Well,
Exactly.
I think that if I was fortunate enough to live until 90 years old, my organs wouldn't be worth much, which would be great. But at the same time, just in terms of, that's a kind of a practical thing to do, a good cause to make, a good action to take, is that if I can't use them, there's probably someone else who could. And that's not actually a Buddhist belief, that's just something that, that's a personal thing in terms of ritual, and as a Buddhist, what I'd like to do.
Thank you. Now, how about rituals or practices?
Well, that varies greatly also, and actually it does kind of follow what she was saying. There have been different denominations that have come up. Some of them have hard and fast rituals. We have a witch's Bible here, which does have pretty much a funeral awake in it. And part of that is because...
How similar is it to the wake that I think a lot of people think of when...
It's probably one of its purposes is to be more similar, because it makes people who are going to be around more comfortable with death. It also makes, when you're raised in a tradition, you said you're Catholic, and part of you will be Catholic no matter how long you're Buddhist. So there have been a lot of rituals that have been raised and instated for that purpose. One of the very, very old traditions with witches is that usually what's done is the witches traditionally know when they're going to die ahead of time. And they pretty much take care of things the way they want them taken care of. I had a great grandmother who went out and bought her her funeral clothes and went and got flowers from different people so that everyone would be able to afford to go to the funeral. Usually there are also hard and fast rules. There are some, and that is the tools, and there are some shown here. That
Well, that's actually next, so why don't you explain some of those for us?
Okay, well the tools here, on the cover of the book here, there's a chalice, which represents female energy. There's a small knife, which, and a sword, which represent male energies. There is a wand, everyone's heard of the magic wand, and that's used for spiritually carving and focusing things. These items are very specific. They're usually handmade by the particular witch and invested with energies. So therefore, when you die, you probably don't want to, you might want to. You might want to give to your daughter, but you don't want just anyone getting a hold of them. So usually they are taken out and they're either interred in a garden or they're removed in some way so that the witch can, when she or she is gone, can rest comfortably. And that's one of the rituals also. Some of the others that have been carried down actually have been given to us in many older cities, like Salem. Witches, when they died, would be put in the churchyard where everyone was, but they would be put the other way.
The other way, what do you mean?
Yes, where everyone else's feet were, our heads would be.
Oh, okay.
That was on Judgment Day. That way God wouldn't make a mistake and think we were Christian. It was, but I mean, that's not one of ours, but that people who have seen witch graves pointing the other way have been curious about that and thought it had something to do with the witch tradition, but it's one that was given us more than...
And also about witches, again, I wanted to, I know a lot of people associate the color black with death, with mourning, with going to funerals, and I notice living in Salem that a lot of witches wear black, and I don't believe they're walking around in mourning all the time.
No,
could you explain?
Actually, it's the exact opposite. Different colors have different vibrations. Different vibrations give different energies. You're in a lot of blues, and blues are used a lot in healing. People's auras that have a lot of blue tend to be healers, nurses, doctors. Black has all the vibrations of all the colors in it, so it would be a good way to absorb energy. It's also a good grounding color because when you are trying to deal with different energies in the universe, different harmonies, you do want to keep a very strong sense of self and keeping focused on what's real. Again, you want to keep the details there but not get lost in them.
Okay, so we have a few minutes left. Really quickly, I know Sue had talked about the artifacts that she had brought. What are some of these other things? Okay,
well, we have here a few things. We have, this is a Wiccan mask. It's for the festival of summer called Lammas. One of the things that does occur in the male-female principle, we have a god and a goddess. And I think that's very good because pretty much nature shows us that when we want to have birth of something in the universe or puppies or whatever, we have a male and a female. And each of us have in us the genetic material from a mother and a father, so we have.
And what I think is interesting, since we're running out of time, quickly, is that the rosary beads here, as well as is this Mary?
This is a Mary, yeah. This
Christian.
Well, this was brought in. This was brought in as a wide spectrum of religious icons, but the goddess figure, also Mary, sort of does fill a place, I think, in Christian religion for the female energy. Again. The universe was born, traditionally that's born of woman. This mask, one of the differences is this actually is sort of like belongs near the Mary figure also because the god is born in the spring and comes to flower and dies, if you will, in the winter, and again comes back immortal in the spring. So this would be one of the reasons this is made out of dried grasses, etc., is the plants, the life of the earth itself represents the god, and at this point he would be have gone through life and fulfilled that particular cycle.
So really briefly, are there male and female energies in Buddhism? Is it?
There's I always refer to as the gods because they're female and male, and It's actually not a specific energy, in terms of being born a female or a male, that's also karmatic in this lifetime as well. I wanted to explain really quick, I know we're running out of time. This is Shakyamuni Buddha, and that's just the Buddha of the earlier day of the law. And actually Buddhism went from India 2,000 years ago and is actually practiced now in 101 different countries, even in Nicaragua. And but this is one of the first Buddhas, and there's a few of them. Nichiren Daishonin, which I do a lot of studying on, that's the Buddha of the latter day of the law.
Well, I wish we had lots more time, because I've learned a really great amount of information, and learned that there's so many things in common, where I think we need to do this more often between different groups. There's usually a great deal of fear and suspicion between different groups. Someone's right, someone's wrong. And it just seems like there's so much more in common. I mean, even with a lot of the beliefs that I got brought up with, it just seems like we have a lot more in common than we usually tend to think. So I'd like to thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to thank SATV for letting us put on this show, and our instructor, Ron Cox. This show is a product of a class that we've been taking for the last few weeks here. There are about 8 of us behind the scenes, and as well as myself. And so hopefully you've enjoyed this show, and hopefully you've learned as much as I have. So thank you very much, and good night.
I'll wait for you.